Test. How do I get in there? Eighty by 720. I gotta change the resolution according to this. Reading this notice that I got, but looks like I'm quite a ways. Yeah, about 15 seconds or 20 seconds away from being. I can have a better connection, I guess, but it's good enough since I don't need to jump around anyway. And anyway, I'm just basically coming in here to greetings, Cub Dodge 1981, familiar face, and I guess this is the earliest time I've done this. I'm just playing it by ear. I mean, there's plenty of things to talk about, but I'm more interested if there's anything that anybody has on their minds that is listening to this, so I'll or that is paying attention to T and Do's material, and I'm looking for any questions that people have that I can try to help give the perspective that I got from it, from whatever the question might be. Anyway, so I could go through these pictures again. I've done it before a number of times, but okay, I've got a message in the chat room that says I'm gonna try that transfiguration diet. Sounds great. I think I don't know, what you'll definitely see some. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm not gonna forecast what anybody's gonna experience, but I know where it came from, so I don't think there's a better diet on the planet, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not like you could tell somebody in some other environment, let's say in any of the other continents, that it's the best diet on the planet. I wouldn't say that because they may have different issues. that are taken care of with slightly different changes. But I think overall, I think for the human body, and maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe getting rid of the mucus and continuing to have uh, real good energy and nutrition. So what happened in the classroom is that we progressed, but Doe had the book written on basically the foundation, the way it looks. And what I did for the Lyme's disease that I was able to use the diet to facilitate the healing of, which it did. Uh, I expanded on that diet, and because we expanded on it in the group, I didn't do it just for those reasons that it was done by Doe and by Doe at that point that happened, because T was already outside her vehicle, but. But I liked the things that we did while I was a guinea pig in that program, which Doe called a Life Extension Research Team, Advanced Life Extension Research Team, ALERT, because that's what it was. And we went on, like, for instance, was one thing that's not in the Transfiguration Diet book is that we started consuming as a meal bananas and tahini as a meal. And I would eat up to 6 bananas sometimes. That might have been like the max that anybody would eat in one sitting. And then we went on to the Ann Wigmore's diet, examining that, and Hippocrates Health Institute. And so they sent, Doe sent Livodi and Junodi, I believe, to that institute in Boston. We were living in California at the time. In John Wayne's old house, one of the houses he had in Newport Beach. But so when they came back with the information from Ann Wigmore's program, Doe tried to incorporate a number of those things into our diet. And so we were making seed cheese, which is basically grinding up sunflower seeds, I believe it was. And then we had a dryer, a dehydration little machine. And so we put them in. Well, first we fermented them in like a cheesecloth or something, I think. And then when they got to the point to where they were fermented enough, but not too much, which was a process to learn about, and I really never became good at it because I wasn't on that crew. But they were put in a dehydrator, and we would take those to our job. And at that time we were blending sprouts. We were growing sprouts, and sunflower seed sprouts and buckwheat sprouts. We had trays all over the house on racks, like those trays that you would see in a cafeteria. And then, we were using, so we were growing all the sprouts and the wheatgrass from that. And we're doing a lot of juicing at that point. I think the morning meal was juice. Mostly carrot and apple, and it could be cabbage, it could be greens, of any kind, or I don't need to get real specific about it, but like celery was in there, I think, and a lot of times, and uh, yeah, just trying to think about some of the other items that were in there. Parsley, um, anyway, so we did that. That would be the morning meal, and then for an afternoon or lunch kind of meal might be the bananas and the tahini. And it was a limited amount of tahini. I forget what it was, but it was plenty, in my opinion. Uh, and you're encouraged to eat more bananas if you are losing weight too fast, because uh, I was down to my lowest weight, I think 129 or something. I'm 5'8" and a half around that time. And that was after some fasting too. That happened before that. But and one of the fasts that they did was the Burroughs cleanser, which was a tablespoon. Um, no, an ounce of maple syrup, grade B, or the grade that's got the most minerals in it, and maple syrup, and an ounce of lemon juice, freshly squeezed, and organic if you can find it. Cover your bets. Take a chance on a positive. That's what that's about. That was a saying of T and Do with the organics, even though I know they can be, just as corrupted as anything else, depending on where they're grown and all that. And anyway, but you got a better chance, I think, with the organic movement, because the rich want to have uh, those clean things, and so we all can pay more for them. And so basically, anyway, I don't need to talk about that. Nothing new to anybody that's listening to this probably. But get back on T and O. That's more important. Um, so that's a little bit about the diet. So I used to take a green drink. We used to make a drink out of those buckwheat sprouts and sunflower seed sprouts together. They would be ground up. You take the seeds off the sunflower seed sprouts, and it was carrots. And I remember how my hands ended up getting like tingly when they were in cold water, especially, which we would use to wash the carrots. And I guess, and I had these blisters that kind of came out of my chest, little blood blisters. They didn't pop or anything. There weren't anything. They just came to a head. Anyway, and they did a lot of things. I mean, we did a lot of things back and forth, changing to different diets, and adding back in meats and things like that, and getting rid of them again. Desserts, sweets, we had that. We went back to having dessert every night, made by the bakery inside the group. Anyway, so Doe did say that changing is good. It's like the body thrives on adjusting to different things, and it's good for the immune system, I think. So not getting too locked in on any one thing, but for a period of time, I think it's to put the discipline into place. I think it's good to follow it to the letter. and use it for as long as it works for somebody. But don't be afraid to, don't make it into a religion. I would, my advice is, whatever it's worth, to where I'm not talking to somebody, to you now. I'm talking to anybody that might listen to this in 10 years or something when I'm gone or something. And because I know it's going to keep on, the information is going to keep on corrupting. And so the ones that are still have access to it now can be of great service to the garden to the next level by passing it along. And that becomes our lesson also for a student to work for the next level, because the next level doesn't need us. And so it's for our benefit that they give us the opportunity. And we don't see that at first necessarily, but we can sometimes, all humans, I think, have some of that ingrained in them, because all humans have part of the mind from the next level in them. And that's the reason why we thirst to be better, or to make something of ourselves in our minds, reach for a goal, or and take steps in the direction that you want to, and dealing with all the negatives that come when that when you start to do that, and you get spurts, and if and well, and so the next level is like they're looking for the individuals that are asking for help in their own way. It doesn't have to be in any particular terminology. They may just have a sense that there's somebody in the universe that created everything that can help, and I'm gonna, not gonna be afraid of because if they're so powerful that they can design the earth and all the kingdom levels, they're worth taking a chance on that they can know what's best for us. And if they don't want robots, and they're not going to impose anything upon anybody. In fact, the people that proceed with a communication with them uh, um, need to keep on showing that they want more of that. And so the way Tian Do taught us was that um, uh, um, well, what I recognized is that I was at least willing to say, I want to be in your hands many years ago in 1999 or so. And, or 2000, maybe it was even 2001, when I got to the point to where I said that to them in my head, not in a dream or anything. And they helped me with that a great deal because I said I couldn't, please don't include my leaving my daughter and family. Because I knew that was part of the process of graduating out of the human kingdom entail. I knew I was with that classroom that was based on the ones that were graduating the human kingdom. They were moving to a reality that's even a greater reality than what we have here, because they have the overview of us over thousands and thousands and millions of years. Or whatever, we can't even really put a year count onto it. That's why they talk about it as eternal, or always was and always will be. There's no way to, but Do did say that where the chief came from something, the chief of chiefs came from something, and that we wouldn't understand where that chief came from until we got into the next level, and we're not in the next level just by dying. even though the next level, depending on what grade in school we're in when we die, uh, will sort us into different boxes. And but they don't want to save any of the spirits and souls that are um, well, I think where Jesus said the meek shall inherit the earth. I don't know this from Tiendo, but I suspect that the meek are the kind, the compassionate, the peace loving, the gentle among us, and I believe those become the foundational thoughts and spirit, which is the same thing as thoughts. Well, not exactly the same thing, but it's the organization of the genetically based emanation, or actually, no, it's not genetically based. It's genetically grounded too. I think that would be a better way to say it. Um, the human being or all the mammals, to some degree. I mean, maybe the reptiles too. I don't know. To what degree the animal kingdom was considered to be one kingdom in terms of Tiendo. So they didn't differentiate between reptilians and mammals as being, even though they have different characteristics, but they're all encompassed in the same growth level in terms of the mind, the spirit of them. To where the human then, they said they took out the missing link so that the humans couldn't figure out exactly how the transition was made to primitive humanoid vehicles to human vehicles as we know them now, or as we know them through our history, which goes back thousands of years, many thousands of years. Goes back to how many civilizations there have been on the planet. That's how far it goes back. And all those civilizations uh, all potentially had their origin from a relationship with people from other planets that were human equivalents, which are today's space aliens, human equivalents. So they're extraterrestrials that the next level gave the opportunity to come to the Earth in order to go through a training program to where they could become adult members of the next level. And they could have even been part of a technology that had spacecrafts, that had anti-gravity, while they were growing on their human equivalent garden. And so those said that they were all brought back from a number of different locations among the galaxies or among the universe or in the heavens, in outer space. He didn't get specific about where, but the image I got was that they were close to the Earth. But I don't know what that means in terms of. I don't even know if that's a correct image because we really can't accurately second guess the next level. We have to. It's best to stay as close to what they said as possible. Not that there's anything wrong with trying to describe it in different ways, because the next level pictures that they give are multifaceted. And Tiendo talked about that in the Black Hawk tapes, on how that they were only understanding a percentage of what they felt they were given by the next level older members on spacecrafts while they were in human vehicles teaching the classroom. And then they said that if we understood even a half or a small percentage of what they were understanding, we'd be doing good. And see, now when they used to talk like that a little bit. I mean, not a little bit. I was in the classroom during the Black Hawk tapes, but they would say that several times throughout the years. on how they only had a percentage of it, or that how this works for now, this understanding works for now, and how things seem to be this way, but then and so we need to think about them in this way as a lesson. They didn't say it to be as a lesson, but that's what it was. And then they would come back and say that's not accurate, or they would say that this is accurate for now. And they said that about whether humans had souls or not. So I remember when I was out in the world working, and they were saying that um, not all humans had souls. I remember just thinking that's weird. That's really weird. And because I was starting to look at people and that were not outside the classroom, and I was thinking I don't even know how to think about that. It doesn't. But it was just like it's like my mind was challenged, I think is the way to say it, and that happened many times. And but I didn't even necessarily know at the time that it was happening because I wasn't that conscious of how I was responding. I was so intent on just being a sponge for what Tiendo were providing, which I think was spot on for the amount that I did that, and but I let creep in a challenge to that, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, except in a subtle way. It's always like a tricky thing that happens, sometimes. I mean, if once we go through a lesson and we get it a number of times, the lesson has to get stronger before we have the chance to learn that lesson. And that's the way Tiendo taught that lessons are given to humans. I'm talking about all humans because they ended up coming back and saying that that's not accurate, that all humans don't have souls. And so stop thinking about it that way. That's what they put in the update. Maybe that was weeks later, a couple weeks later. A lot of the things they gave us, they made like required thinking or required actions. They didn't say for how long, and then just after a couple weeks or a month maybe, it seemed like they would say that's optional now, or they would just move on to something else, and the individuals that chose to continue to have certain routines that were optional anyway, but that they established as times for to do, they would do more. And so individuals in the classroom were growing at their own rate. Like re-listening to tapes was encouraged, but I very rarely listened to tapes over again. But I remember seeing Junodi listening to tapes over again, and 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 she was no less busy than I was. In fact, I would think that if anything, she was busier than I was. I mean, I'm not comparing necessarily as a competition, even though there were shades of that between some individuals. I know that were competitive with one another, and that surfaced regarding Soroti, who was the individual that was, I don't know if you could see any of his hair, but he was from an Irish descent, his vehicle. And so he was very quick. And so when he would run up to the trailer because Tiendo called for one or two students to do do a little task for them, maybe taking something to somebody or going to find somebody in the camp and telling them that Tiendo wanted to talk to them. And so they would run up to the window and talk to Tiendo. Sorority would run up to the trailer, and at a pretty quick, you know, about as fast as he could, I think. And so some would think that why was he running? You know that, and T and Doe had a meeting sometime after that when they found out how some people were responding. Was that don't take that away from sorority. That's a good thing that he wants to serve as older member to that degree, that he's willing to sprint over there. But that doesn't mean that everybody has to do that. And actually, uh, we would actually like to put a procedure into place that don't break into a run, break into do a fast walk. So even T and Doe would always say something that's where the procedures came from in the books, in all the many books that the people are claiming were controlling us, which it was a very controlled environment, no question about that. But the amount of control that they had over us was, yes, we couldn't go out, but if we wanted to go out, we could. I mean, there were no locks on the inside of the doors to keep them from opening, or the windows. And people did leave in the middle of the night. Ricordi left several times maybe in the middle of the night one time and maybe two times. But he kept on staying in touch, and because he loves his older member, and always did. But his problem was his booger. I'm not saying his only booger, or the booger can have multifaceted. That's what we call discarnates that were, or space aliens that were assigned to the students to be there, to stimulate what they needed to overcome. Which I started to talk about this because I was talking about bombardment, and they called them at the time when they told us about it, to think of the like, for instance, if we kept on having the thought of something we left behind. Okay, for me it could have been playing the flute, which I don't really remember having the thought of, but because somebody that left children behind might be feeling the tug of those children, because the root system on the humans is invisible, but it's very much real. And so if we're having trouble with that, it actually would kind of draw our energy to trying to block it out in order to not be tied to that root system anymore. Because that was the purpose of leaving, was that you had to break up all the ties, separate from the human kingdom. That was the final exam. That happens during the time that those souls are in human vehicles, taking them over to where the spirit of the human vehicle is agreeing to allow it to happen and to not interfere, and can even learn from it. And so the bombardment, if it was too much, Tiendo said that we could ask the next level to reduce it. And but then other times they would come to us and say, we're not getting the next step, and so we need you to pull harder. You need to have more thirst. And sometimes they would even give us something to say to help us have more thirst. And the one time they gave that to us, I remember I was partners with a Destodi, and we were in a tent together, and the procedure was to say something in earshot of your partner. And I remember the saying was something like this: isn't there some way I can grow faster? You know, uh, to accomplish this task for the next level, or whatever we wanted to say about it. Um, but and to say it with feeling. And so basically, it was taking over the vehicle by using this programming. But the next level, but Tiendo didn't say how often we needed to say it. And so it was left up to the individual to do that. And then after, I don't know, I think we did that in Mississippi. I don't know if there was a strategy to that on the next level's part, because Tiendo taught that there were different areas of the country that had different spirit populations. Because if they died in that area, then, you know, thinking that was their state, they probably stay in that area for the most part. Unless one from, you know, one of their relatives or friends or whoever there is that they've become accustomed to trying to influence to have the same behaviors they had before, travel somewhere else, then they might, you know, go with them. They might not even know that they can actually leave them and come back to them pretty easily, because Tiendo taught that spirits don't know where some of the gates and doors are, but the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls uh, do know more about the different places you can go in the unseen world that seems to be within the atmosphere of the planet, however far that extends in electromagnetic field. But I don't think extends as far as the moon. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not emanations that the Earth is putting out, that like the frequencies, like the sound, like Tiendo taught that the spheres make music, and you hear different things when you're in different configurations in the galaxy, and or in, you know, wherever you're traveling around doing your tasks. And I'm going to go over to the chat room. I don't know if individuals that recently said something. Oh, first, how long? I got a question in the chat room. How long did you do that for a given time? And yeah, the diets. If you're talking about the diet still, the different changes in the diets. Um, Nothing lasted that long. You know, I mean, months, I think, would be the all I would say about it. And I'm not even, you know, like a year. Certainly not a year. But overall, some things we kept on coming back to. And I after I left the group, I know Doe took the remaining students through, especially the new students, through uh, uh, um, a mini version of what had occurred from the first group from 1975. And so they did some fasting. They did the Burroughs cleanser, and I don't know all what they did. I'm sure they did all mucusless diet, but they didn't do it necessarily for the same amount of time. But and Doe said that some that were among those 38, he didn't say which ones, would have to come back for another human incarnation in order to go through another lesson period with an older member. Okay, I'm going to go to the next thing. Let's see, working now, Famali, working now. Hello there, nice to meet you. Yes, nice to meet you. And do you recommend meditation? Well, yes, Tian Do and recommended meditation for sure. And we didn't start with any meditation for the first, I would say 7, 8, 9, maybe 9 years. We didn't have any meditation. We didn't read the Bible. We didn't do anything spiritual. Had very few books. But then in 1984, approximately, or three maybe it was actually, they started a meditation regimen and wanted us to meditate 3 times a day. And one of the meditations was, which was a primary one. There weren't that many different kinds of meditations, although there were some affirmations that they gave us. And of course, written documents as well. And to occupy our minds with that were positive affirmations. But the meditation that I should try to describe right now was thinking about the light from the next level, from the creators of the planet, the beings that created the planet, coming through the top of one's head, imagining that, and healing as it goes through every cell through the whole body. Okay, and it's a very simple meditation, and what's healing is the mind and the body is what is experiencing the healing. So in other words, if we have wrong information about the reality of the next level and what the purpose of the garden is, then we want that cleansed out of us too. And that's not necessarily easy to do. And we don't always recognize, we don't recognize how much of the human condition we have in us, because I mean, we've all potentially gotten rid of a lot of humanness, and that's why people are sometimes not drawn to participate in the world in terms of, like, all the climbing of the ladders to success, and they drop out, and they, substances, it can be also part of it, dropping out, and but also, thirsting for something else, and trying to get out of the problems that we get into, and asking for help from the next level is a huge thing to do. And the way that Tian Do taught about asking for help from the next level was to reach for the highest source you could reach for in the heavens, in the distant heavens, though, as far as away as the stars are. That's the way we need to think about it, because I need to think about it that way to be accurate, to get to the right place, because there's a lot of discarnate spirits and souls that want us to not pay attention to the highest source, and that they can deliver to us what we need. And they put upon us their thinking, where the next level requires us to ask for their thinking and requires us to keep on asking for that thinking and behavior and ways goes with that. So that's what we're thinking of as being healed from us, is being our humanness being healed from us, because there's another step beyond human that's evolutionarily above the human kingdom in all ways, spiritually, mentally, mental, spiritual, the same thing in a sense, because spirit and mind are synonymous according to Tiendo. And information is the description of the mind and the manifestation of it and the focus of it. And I guess a lot of things. I can't begin to know how to describe it with, how many, because it's multifaceted. And our awareness is, can be very, very small, and we can be led to think that it's very, very big. And so therefore live in kind of a holodeck mindset that we've created for ourselves. But when the older members come from the next level to take human vehicles, which they don't do often, they do every like 2,000 years, in this current civilization anyway, and not that they don't have teachers that are coming in between those times, or even simultaneous to those times in different cultures. Like those suspected that the Buddhist culture because it was talking about separation from the worldliness, even though the lesson point at that time was to moderation. And that's because it wasn't the graduation time yet. But they were teaching when the Buddha, Gautama Buddha, went to left everything behind to become an ascetic in the mountains. He was overcoming all his humanness to do that. And that is characteristic of a member of the next level to do that. And but then when it becomes a routine that is thought of as, okay, if I go over to the Himalayas and I go and do that, or I find somebody that's doing that now, it's not that that can't have value, that can have value. But if that becomes thought of as the last step, and now we're removed from society, and we're removed from everything, and we're living that lifestyle, then we're not going to be attentive to the change when it comes. So it becomes a trap. And the changes always come, especially to the human kingdom, but throughout the next level is also continuing to grow. Members of the next level don't cease to grow. And so they designed the human kingdom so that the first 6 grades in the 12th grade school was getting into the human kingdom. And so by the 6th grade, everything's going for us pretty well, and we have a great family, and we have a great career, and we could be giving to the different philanthropic organizations, and participating in them to different degrees, or have a career that does that. And a lot of things can be, and I'm not putting this down because uh, but it is the epitome of that is recognition is the equivalent to the next level as being having reached the sixth grade, and that's considered to be like a toddler condition. Okay, and because humans are children, all of us are children to the next level, and we need to become more like children once we get to that sixth grade, because we can think that we're adults at that point, and that we're successful humans, and that we've reached the maximum, and we can stay in that grade. I'm talking about like spirits, but it also pertains to souls. Souls being the containers that end up being filled with the mind from the next level, to where enough of that mind from the next level is in our container that we're at least 51% in charge of what the vehicle does and doesn't do. That's the way Do described it, I believe. And I know I went through a lot of different things there, but all these points are just, to me, crucial to trying to synopsize a lot of the things that, well, a lot of the things that Tiendo taught. Um, which of course they taught us all in little degrees. And I didn't even know what half the things they said meant. But 10 years later, after I left them, I think they helped me wake up to more. And I guess since I took the option of choosing to return to trying to at least be willing to give my life in terms of relaying the truth about Tiendo, uh, I think that's they've helped me see more, and not that everything I see is accurate. I know it's not, and I get off the track, but I'm asking them to help me with that, and so when I do get off the track and I recognize it, I try to correct it on the spot, because I have nothing to lose by uh, recognizing when I get off track. And a lot of what I'm talking about, you know, uh, is uh, is in the audio tapes and more. And if anybody listens to the audio tapes and hears anything that is being said there that seems to be different from things that I'm saying, or might even be addressing something in a better way than I'm learning to address it, I'd like to know it, and let me know what tape it is, and I'll go back and listen to it. Because I haven't re-listened to them all, and so I'd like to do that. I'd love to see those transcribed. I got to find a way to do that. So I guess I'll go back to the chat room. Well, that meditation though had to do with also knowing that the pineal gland was in like the top center of the head. Maybe it's the center exactly. I don't remember now if it was a little above center in the head, but I know the thinking that they gave for it was that the center of the top of the head was the focus of it. And another meditation they had was imagining yourself sitting at the foot of the chief. And the picture that they gave us of the chief was uh, that older member picture that's in the top left corner of my screen. But we didn't look at that picture while we were meditating. We didn't look at any pictures when we were meditating. So note that they didn't have us meditate on them or their pictures, which is consistent with the Old Testament. Not having any representations of the next level made by man. Because then those become they're not living. And I don't know, there's probably other negatives about that, but I can't think of them right now. But probably subtle negatives. Well, it's just that you end up, everything becomes more representative instead of what it was, what it really meant. And to where that you have people that are fully embroiled in the world, with everything. They made it to the top of the sixth grade. Whether they might actually be a president of the United States and be a sixth grader, or they might be in seventh or eighth grade. I don't know exactly. I can't judge that of anybody. And they could be a 12th grader actually, and for all I know, the next level gave them the task to do that. And so when they graduate, I don't know. It's not within my capacity to. I can't say anything from Tian-Do that would indicate that I had the capacity to judge that. They didn't even try to have the capacity to judge, who, they didn't read us, they said. They said they could have. They could read our minds, so to speak. But they couldn't help but know what some of us were thinking, because they would have, when they would come to a meeting, they knew what boogers they had. They knew what the thoughts were that they were dealing with. From their lives in human kingdom, and from the point when they started to awaken, they started to cut off everything else in the past. When they were actually demonstrating the same procedure that they were giving us to do. And so they were in a process of growth as well. And that's why things changed. And that's why they tried things that they later regretted doing. But those things ended up being opportunities for us to grow from. For instance, changing when they said that the demonstration might not happen, and that the shooting in the streets that they thought was going to happen was by the hands of the press. They were shot down. And little did I know that when I started studying scripture, like in the early 2000s, that I would find that in Revelation 2 witnesses were subdued before they died. And that subduing, subduing, that subduing was said as in the Revelation verse as overcome, that they were overcome. Well, it can't be overcome completely, because overcome completely would mean that or it also means have victory over. It also means prevail as Jehovah, which is the meaning of the word Israel. Prevail as Jehovah, in other words, through Jehovah's teachings, is going to prevail over our humanness. And they were and get the victory over our human mammalian behavior and ways. But so when I looked at the meaning of the word, I forgot what the word was. Let me look it up. Let me even look it up in the here. Revelations 11. Maybe verse 7. Yep. So Revelation 11:7. You may not get this on your screen. Oh yeah, I got it. Great. Let me get it back again. Okay, so Revelation 11:7. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. So overcome here is the word Nikeo or Nikeo. Yeah, that's the way they say that you pronounce it in the Greek, which sounds like Nike, doesn't it? And it means overcome, conquer, prevail, get the victory. That's how it's used. Mostly overcome. But so it's used to conquer, to carry off the victory, come up victorious. Of referring to Christ as victorious over all his foes. Of Christians that hold fast their faith even unto death against the power of the foes and temptations and persecutions. When one is arraigned or goes to law to win the case, maintain one's cause. Oh, but what it doesn't say here, I see, I've got to go to the other translation. Sorry, 11:7, I got to go over to this other New Testament. Revelation 11:7. Different Bible software. Now it says Strong's Concordance, Greek Dictionary, says that it's Nikeo, but it's from Nike, Nike. Pronunciation is Nike, I think, N-E-E asterisk, I guess, dash K, K-A-Y, Nike. Apparently a primary word, conquest abstractly, figuratively the means of success, victory. Okay, but in the other form of it was Nikeo, and they just saying to subdue, literally or figuratively. So they were figuratively subdued. They weren't literally subdued. Well, they were both literally and figuratively subdued in 1976, when, 75 actually, in October 75, when Walter Cronkite came on the news twice over the course of about 2 weeks to talk about the UFO cult and all these people that vanished from Gulfport, Oregon, what happened to them. Were they, taken away by a UFO, or were they killed, or did they commit suicide, or those are all the thoughts that were going around. And then 2 weeks later, Cronkite came out with saying that they figured out who they were, and that they were charlatans because they were from Texas, an opera singer and a nurse from Texas, and that Doe had a felony conviction because of well, anybody can go look it up, but look it up, read what he said about it if you want to get the most accurate interpretation, because I realized later that logic would say that T and Doe had nothing to lose by telling the truth and telling exactly what they believed in. They already said things throughout the classroom that they knew would reduce the numbers. It's not like they wanted to reduce the numbers. They didn't. Well, maybe at first they did. I don't know. T might have knew right from the beginning that there weren't going to be 100 graduates in that classroom. But actually, I shouldn't even say that, because it doesn't mean that it's not possible. Yeah, this is an example where I feel like I was just corrected, because I was giving an opinion that is not right, because T and Doe didn't limit. They said that everybody in that class was capable of graduating, although they said that there might have been some in the class that were humans, that weren't returning souls, from next level souls, coming back to take over a human vehicle that was given a certain type of soul for a returnee. So some might have been just a human that was given a deposit of a soul, but not for the return of a member of the next level. And that might have been me. I might have been one of those. But maybe not. Maybe I was one that was the result of a soul that returned, having been with or having graduated enough to be ready for that graduation classroom, from 2,000 years ago. I mean, I have, different. It doesn't really matter what I think about myself. In fact, what I think about myself is irrelevant. But I'm just saying it because I feel compelled to be transparent as I can be. Without getting into, because the way I live my life isn't an example of a member of the next level necessarily. To degrees, yes, but to degrees, all of us can be examples of living in regards to the next level, as our, uh, which is, not always a conscious thing that we're thinking about, but doesn't have to be conscious necessarily for it to be potent in the next level's mind. Because they know what each of us is up against, and they knew there were going to be individuals that were going to be coming after, I believe, souls that that were in their growth. Their step was more right for them now, rather than having uh, been among those 38. And it does, but there's no limit on anybody's growth in the next level, and even non-human kingdom when we're students of the members of the next level that were incarnate. So that theoretically, Tiendo said that we could pass up uh, an older member of the next level. But that the older members in the next level are growing very fast, and so that's probably not going to happen. But I mean, it's like, I mean, it's just the principle of it is what they were teaching, because there isn't competition in the next level. Nobody's like saying, okay, I want to grow as fast as that person, because they're not necessarily going to know, because they don't have insignias on their, they don't wear on their sleeves marks that say, how intelligent they are, or how much they know, and or how many times they've overcome the human kingdom to try to help students grow into that kingdom, or what labs they became specialists working in, whether it's the design of new vehicles, or whatever it is, or or different weather patterns, or different geological developments, or different comet designs, who knows what, anything we can imagine can be potentially a laboratory in the next level, except for, we can examine it, we can imagine them in a human way, and we're probably not going to be accurate. I mean, we really can't imagine everything. I mean, not even, I don't even know how many things we can imagine. Everything's not the word for it. They're kingdom level above us, so we can be as in the dark as a dog is when they're living in the master's house. A dog that wants to be there and wants to serve only the master and doesn't even want to run with the pack anymore has become that grown into the human kingdom, which is when is at that point, then that spirit of that dog is can be a spirit that comes into a human baby, contributes to that baby's development of their spirit. That's how that works, I believe, according to Tiendo, which they didn't talk about it exactly in that way, but they talked about it in enough different ways that I think that picture is fairly accurate. Because they taught that the influences of the planet were spirits, and they were using human vehicles as timeshare, and that what the human vehicle was the decider of which mind to share, which mind to make their own, in other words, not just to share. I mean, just to have thoughts doesn't mean necessarily those are becoming us, because a lot of things we put in the back burner, right? You hear something and you think, oh, I don't know if I believe that. That's weird, so back burner, or some things you don't even put on the back burner, uh, if we have what I would call evil thoughts, thoughts of hurting somebody else, in some way, or getting back at somebody, jealousies and competitions, and that can get even violent, even physical, and we can dwell on that, and then we become that. The more we dwell on it, the more we manifest that behavior. So that if we're going through those kind of thoughts in our heads, which I don't do, unfortunately, but I've had negative thoughts that were of that nature, in a sense, in a limited fashion, thank the Lord, thank the next level, which I don't want to put to the test, because I don't want that. I know I can be overcome by the negative forces of this planet, and it's only the next level that helps us ward it off, because it can be very strong, I imagine. We can, we can't imagine the kinds of influences that some vehicles are taken over by, that do horrible things, all these shootings, and which are examples of vehicles that in some fashion allowed that hate to manifest in them, many times given to them, pushed upon them, forced upon them, by bad treatment, being treated that way. And so it became an impulse to justify treating fire with fire, and which Jesus was, the reason he was teaching to not match fire with fire was because when we ever are willing to lose our vehicle rather than fire back to blow away the other vehicle in some fashion, then even if we die from that, the next level can see our spirit and take that spirit and accelerate it to a new grade in school, so that it can be prepared to leave. And so that's done gradually by the next level saying things about uh, the existing structures in the world that develop, the religions and governments, that's so strange that only a few people can actually recognize the truth of it, and everyone else uh, uh, feel can feel threatened by it for various ways. If as with Jesus, that they actually said in the scriptures there that the high priests didn't like the way that Jesus was influencing those that were their students. Were now looking to him instead, and so they needed to get rid of him in their minds, and so they influenced the government to do it. And Jesus was fully aware of that, so he was basically committing suicide by saying the things he was saying. And he knew that from the beginning, that was his purpose to do that. So, it's a suicide mission for a member of the next level to come into the human kingdom, to try to bring up the humans from getting out of their animalness. their mammalianness, their attachments to their mammalian root systems. And so, so what I was saying before is, Theodore taught that they changed what they had already said about the demonstration. And when they said that to the students that were with them at that time, which I was among, but I don't actually remember the conversation. I probably hadn't been a good listener at that point. But what they said to the students was that they fully recognized that they would understand for individuals not to follow them anymore, because the basis of what they were teaching was that they would die from a demonstration uh, uh, that they called the demonstration by the hands of humans that were against them, and then they would recover from that and to re-demonstrate again what Jesus demonstrated. And so what Doe said about that was that for the most part, the students said, well, what's next? And it didn't faze me at all. Even though I was studying scripture at that point, it was like, I hadn't really studied scripture before that much. I mean, I did when I was in high school a little bit, in combination with dropping acid. So yeah, I didn't know what I was thinking about, except when I quit dropping acid and smoking weed, because of an experience that my girlfriend had, a psychic experience that I participated in, that I recognized. Then I remember studying scripture when I was at a party, trying to figure out what Jesus was talking about, and it was what Jesus said that I was looking at in the Gospels. See, unknowingly that my vehicle had been picked and prepped to be a potential recipient of the classroom. A fish that was prepared to be caught, that was looking for the bait, being the truth, being the package keywords. Leave all behind was one of the package keywords. Give your all was another package keyword. I don't mean to diminish it by saying it's a package keyword. Sounds like it though. I repeat it over and over again, like that, saying that. It's probably a bit more next. I don't know what words T and O would use for that. But I came to think of it. Well, programming is what they would say. That the programs were put in. That souls had programs put in them, and those programs actually gave recognition of the next level to whoever was given, whatever human vehicle was given that deposit. which I equated that to the seed of that Jesus talked about. So the deposits were some are stolen by the birds, and that's what I believe the Luciferian space alien fallen angels. So I imagine that some of those can be some of the spiritual gurus that are they may be on the top of the mountain, on the human mountain, but even if it's spiritually, but if they don't, uh, if they're not open to what's come that's new from off the mountain, from individuals that are off the mountain, the next level members, then they won't get off the mountain, and they maybe be stuck in 12th grade or 11th grade, wherever they are. Um, but the next level is the judge of those individuals, not me. So I can't speak to any one person about, and say that they're off track. I mean, because even I can point out what I believe is off track about what they're saying and teaching, because to me, there's a lot of things that are off track. But those things can work for all the individuals in the human kingdom that are at a certain grade level in school to where they're not ready to graduate. But I mean, if individuals are supporting like the governments and killing people and stuff like that, I don't think they're, they've got 51% of next level mind in their thinking to where, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to support that. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not judging the people that are working in the offices and, that are part of the government. Well, the government's over there in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen in one way or another, in other places, periodically killing people in the name of some national security. I'm not saying that, you know, they're any more responsible for that than people that are paying their taxes. But I think, I suspect that the next level, if they ask the next level for help to separate more from that, will help them. And some of them, it might be hard. They may have to retire early, but the next level can help everybody that asks for help to separate more from the human kingdom in order to grow further towards graduation in some future now or in a future incarnation. I'm not one to say who's going to still be capable of graduating at this point. Doe left the door open, and he didn't say that the only way to go through that door was by laying down the human vehicle's life that we have at this time. He said to go where he is, I think, requires that, but he's not going to give that chance to somebody that isn't ready for that step. But if a human does take that step and thinking that they're going to be with Doe, I'm not the judge of that human, and I'm not, even if somebody lays down their life thinking that they're doing the right thing, like in the Jonestown thing, events, that doesn't mean that even if they were victimized, that the next level will see them as a soul or a spirit that's not worth saving for future opportunity to grow further, because they did choose to separate from the human kingdom. But then those that are separating from the human kingdom because of not having to learn lessons of some sort, like failure. Their empire financially collapsed, so they jump off a building, or if they've done, they can't live with themselves anymore because of feeling like they're compromising, uh, and so they even subconsciously start doing drugs and even hope to OD, and even facilitate it one time when they're really stoned or something. I don't know what happens to those spirits and souls. It's not some place to go into, though. It's not some place to think. Death isn't a ticket, or it's death in the next level's way, and the next level's timing that would be uh, could be seen as the ticket. And so, if the next level wants us to grow uh, um, by becoming a student of their behavior and ways, to whatever degree we can put it into motion, according to the major offenses and minor and lesser offenses in the Heaven's Gate book, as best somebody can apply it, and the 17 steps that were given to us early on. Those would be all the guidelines as far as living by the ways of the next level. And of course, using their transfiguration diet, I think would be part of that, because that came from their minds. And everything they taught, is all the evidence of what came from Tiando's minds in their book, and in the tapes, and the Beyond Human series. And that's the material that is the most valuable to all of us that want to proceed in that direction. Um, to whatever degree. It's all a process, and every human in the human kingdom is potentially in that process. And even somebody that's climbing the ladder is still potentially in that process, because the next level presents challenges. I mean, look at all the challenges that humans have, right? Some have less than others, but um, at different times, well, we can't really avoid it anymore. It's not the time for the status quo to be a satisfactory pathway. I don't know how to, but we each have to come to that on our own. It's like you can't really I mean, I'm not the best example of somebody that's, you know, had difficulties. I've had it pretty easy. Um, Not having to work and being able to conquer some of my health problems. Not conquer them. I mean, I just live without pain. Physical and but I'm having more and more mental pain, and in terms of recognizing that a lot of things in the human kingdom just don't appeal to me. I don't want to pursue anything. I don't have any desire to try to have any more of a music persona than I have, even though I keep on playing. I mean, it's fun for me to do, and I recognize that it does attract attention to me sometimes, and that my ego does grow from that, and I don't like that when I see that ego, thinking that I'm something special, which is something that T told me I had to overcome, and and I didn't recognize what that meant at the time, and in terms of T and the things that they said that came true, that's another thing that came true, but I can't prove that to anybody else. But uh, when T told me that there were three things that were going to keep me off the spacecraft, out of her crew. Well, she didn't say out of her crew. She said keep me off the spacecraft. That was the way she wrote it down on a little note, like a 3x5 piece of paper. And three things, and one of them was likes to be seen as something special, and another one was a little too pleased with self, and the third one was sarcastic with humans. And I see those things come out at times. And of course, sarcasm in the human kingdom is considered to be fun a lot of times, right? It's just normal to be sarcastic with one another, even. I guess it depends on what it is and who it's with, and um, so that's not like I don't think that's a major part of my overcoming at this point, but I could be wrong, and I could. I know that sometimes I say things that when I go to gigs, and usually uh, sometimes I get stoned before I go. I smoke a little weed. That's the heaviest stuff I can. That's the heaviest amount of substance that I can handle um, without like kind of frying my brain and becoming a babbling idiot. Or maybe other people think I'm a babbling idiot already right now, but no, I do babble sometimes, but it's not necessarily just from being in a stone condition or some degree of separation of mind from the vehicle, from reality, exaggerated. They say it's getting high, right? Sometimes for some people it exaggerates their sense of well-being and their sense of importance and their sense of understanding of things. But what I would, and I'm not saying that there's not maybe some of that, I'm not saying it's from the next level. So, and I'm not saying that some of that isn't good because, self-medicating I mean, if you're surrounded by negativity, in the news and everything, Doe said that knowing what he knows, if he had to stay in this world, he would have to be drunk. But knowing what he knew was even many times more than uh, that I recognize, and I'm not trying to compare myself with anybody else in what we can recognize about this world. I mean, just look at the world and how they celebrate the wars as being just things to do. And that the warriors, are treated terrible until they die. And then once they die, then they're treated like heroes. Because what they were trained to do actually was stay alive and keep their fellow soldiers alive with them. That became their family. And the ones that join because they want to be of service and to a greater cause, if they, I'm not saying that's not, I'm not saying what's a step in the right direction from the next level's perspective for any given soul or spirit. Um, but I do know that all things can be used for positive towards next level growth. All the negatives can be converted into positives, and Tiendo said that the next level were um, experts, not experts. They were masters of changing negatives into positives. So I've gone in a lot of different directions. I'm going to go back to the chat room, even though I know I left a lot of T's uncrossed and I's undotted. So Craig is saying in the chat room, hi Sawyer, when you first learned oh, I forgot to say about this. Mike said previous to this 129 question. I forgot now what I said about 129. So if you can remind me, I'll read it in the chat room. But I'm going to go on to Craig. Hi, Sawyer. When you first learned the classroom left their vehicles behind, what was your immediate reaction? Shock? Was there a feeling of sadness that you were left behind? No, I didn't have any sadness that I was left behind. I was a little bit shocked, but not that much. And I didn't have any sadness for them either, because I knew they wanted, I knew where their heads were at. The same place where my head was at when I was with them. While what, except for the last close to a year, I guess, maybe a little less than that, maybe 9 months or so. That I was with them when I started to fall off the wagon, so to speak. And my mind started to withdraw from the vehicle at that point, the next level mind portion of my vehicle. And I don't know exactly how that works. I have some ideas about it, but I don't need to try to guess right now about it. But So the reason why I wasn't shocked was because we talked about it a number of times in a number of ways. I expected it actually. Uh, that I expected it before it was instruction to think of it that way, as leaving by our own hands. I was thinking right from the beginning that I would leave because of somebody else's hand against me. You know, someone in the human kingdom that thought that this was blasphemy and wanted to get rid of the blasphemy by getting rid of the vehicle that was promoting it. That's what I thought initially. But T and Do would always say in 1975, they would always say, this is not a martyr trip. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if I was a martyr, but that's what I was vibrating on. I was vibrating on the idea of martyrdom. I didn't even realize that applied to me. Because I recognized later that, I'd grown up with thinking that Jesus was a hero, and I wanted to be that hero. And that wanting to be a hero was like an ego trip. But wanting to serve the next level older member by being willing to lose their life was an advanced uh, growth stage that perhaps I hadn't achieved. Or if I had achieved it, I was flunking what I was capable of. And maybe I flunked what I was capable of anyway, because I think I was fully capable of not flunking the tests that were provided of me that I didn't realize were tests at the time. So, I mean, but we talked about a number of things. I mean, Do talked about right after the 1992 event with David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. He wondered if, even though he didn't agree with anything that David, what's his name was, David Koresh was saying and teaching and doing in his behavior in that little group, he did respect the students that were willing to die rather than leave the compound and turn themselves into the authorities. And he wondered if his students would be that dedicated. And so he even at that point, since he was still trying to figure out how the classroom was going to leave, whether it was going to be by the hand of a human or a human organization, or whether the students were going to just drop off one by one as they got sick, as their vehicles decayed, it went downhill, which he couldn't imagine, and he hated the idea of having to just watch each vehicle expire. And or whether the next level was going to take the vehicles, because right up to the beginning, to the end, they evidenced not knowing whether T would take their vehicles with them. And so they even prepared a bag so that, because the next level is practical. Let's say the next level wanted to use those vehicles to do a task on Earth, like mingling with humans and not being recognized as being different. And so it would be necessary for them to have the clothing that they would, have a passport, maybe, have ID, in order to get along in the human kingdom. The next level could, they could heal the vehicle. And even said that Jesus even said that one of the signs of a next level member is being able to ingest poison and not die from it. And but they were all, what they said was that uh, they hoped that they didn't have to lay down their lives. They would have preferred to exit by not doing that, but that they were 100% willing and were going to do that uh, unless T stopped them or had something else in mind. And that's how much of a reality it was to each of them. Now, I'm not saying that all their heads were in exactly the same place about it. I don't know. I'm not saying that everyone didn't have a demon, but I learned to override the demons, at least some of the demons that I was given to work against me. Even though I'm not saying that I totally overcame those demons, I didn't necessarily, because the next level also regulated how much recognition we had of the next level. Like they could withdraw a mind from us so that we would have a harder time keeping the thoughts out that would be from the lower forces. And that would help stimulate us to reach for help from the next level to get through. I can imagine that it would be like having a thought to do something we think right now is a terrible thing to do. And having that thought, and instead of fighting it off, and having that thought multiply in our head, to where now there's more details to it, and I can even feel that I'm blocking the thoughts from manifesting in my head right now as I'm talking about this, because that hideous vibration has no good in it, and so that's but the next level can make it so that I can't do that, so that if they want to, and but they don't do that, like to play with me. They're doing it because when it forces me to then say to the next level, please, help me with this, because I don't want to have these thoughts. I don't want to be doing this over and over again, even of behavioral things. And that's what the 12-step programs are so good at, providing help with, putting your hands in the higher source's hands, and then clinging to that lifeline to get past something that we know we want to get past. And so then what happens is we are actually exercising a muscle that gives us more willpower to stay away from those things and to even get better and better at blocking them out, so certain thoughts can be knocking at our door, and we can know that they're knocking on the door, but we can actually not let them register in our heads. And I'm doing that right now, trying to keep something from registering in my head. And maybe the next level is helping me with that, because I'm not that good at it sometimes. But in some ways, maybe I'm good at it. In other ways, maybe I'm not. You know what I mean? So, it's like each of us can have this battle. And I'm not saying each of us probably do have this battle. Some may not be conscious of it. some technique might be to what Tino taught was a technique though was to put up a blank card as if it was a cue card in a movie and you were the actor, and then then all of a sudden then you're seeing a blank card and then you put your mind on something else. You don't wait to see if anything's going to show up on that card if you really did block it. No, you put up a blank card and you put your mind on something else. And if you still feel it knocking, which frequently can happen, then keep on putting the blank card up and putting your mind on something else. Put the blank card up. Keep doing it. And that doing that is exercising your mind. And that mind is actually growing stronger to be able to do that better and better. And that's how we choose to wash the brain of the vehicle. We're washing out the things that we don't want in it. Now, we can also do that by putting things in it that we do want, and that can actually end up becoming things that are hard to get rid of because they can have some success. Like, I don't know if this is an example or not, but I remember years ago there was this video that was being circulated. It was called The Secret. And the idea was that whatever you wanted, you should envision it. Not should, if you want to do this, if you want that thing or that person or that opportunity or then you should imagine yourself having it. And to the degree of like if you want a car, then you would imagine yourself sitting in that car and how the wind feels on your face as if it's convertible, for instance, and your dream of that, and that then by doing that, you're setting into motion uh, um, forces, energy to bring that to you. But what they don't know, I believe, is happening, is that you're actually stimulating spirits to bring you those things, because they like those things, and so they gravitate to us. And by doing that, they also provide ideas sometimes on things to do, to work in that direction, to like to earn the money or start a nonprofit that will end up providing a bunch of money that they can just have to whatever it is. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. It's not a matter of that, but that's what we've become. Actually, we uh, that's how we build our mind to become what we want it to become, and we can uh, and we can do that, and we can go through life thinking that we've become enlightened because of be able to do that, to manifest what we want our reality to be. But the next level has ways though of facing us with the truth. That works, but that's like a trick. Latino would call that a trick, uh, because the next level wants us to have nice things. Tiendo said, the next level wants us to have nice things, but they don't want us to want them. They don't want us to want them. Because what they want is for us to recognize that they have something to offer that's many times more valuable than anything in the human kingdom. And it will be as big of a difference as the way we see like horses and dogs. I'm talking about the good relationships of horses and dogs, where they want to be servants to the human masters. And they can be sweet as anything, and they can be as ornery as anything. And when they're sweet, the next level loves them. And when they're ornery, the next level loves them too, because the next level helps them uh, have opportunities to overcome their orneriness. And the next level also helps them overcome a saccharine kind of sweetness. It's a false kind of sweetness, the sweetness that's used to get what you want, you know. Might be an example of that. It's like coming on to somebody knowing that you're looking for something from them, and I mean, it's a game that I'm sure people play in the dating world, whatever, and uh, that I'm not saying that there's something wrong with playing. It's just part of the human kingdom, but uh, it's part of the human kingdom that can be outgrown, to where somebody doesn't put up a false front uh, in order to entice somebody. Even though we can do that naturally to some degree, I guess. It's hard. I was never really in the dating world extensively, just a little tiny bit. And what I experienced of it in a little tiny bit was that uh, it would be misery to have to repeat that over and over again. I mean, I even experienced that, sometimes playing music, that uh, one moment I can think that it's sounding great, and another time I can think it's sounding terrible. And maybe it does sound great at times and terrible at times. And sometimes I lose track of how it sounds, so I don't even know. And because I guess it's got I get a fix from it, I guess, when I play music by myself. And I can watch even the ego kind of getting a fix over it. I can even my mind can wander, and I can be playing the drum set or the flute for a long time and not even be thinking about what I'm doing at all. I don't think I'm thinking about it. I realized later sometimes that I was thinking about it while I was doing it, but I wasn't really directing it to grow. I was kind of just like maintaining, and while my mind was thinking about something else entirely different, and even you know having conversations with people, and full conversations, not going over old conversations, like having people praising me, seeing somebody that I know praising me. That's sick. But I imagine I'm not. I'm sure I'm not the only one that experiences that. And I'm not even a big movie star or anything. I'm not successful in any of those, in any way that would be considered successful in the human kingdom. So, so if I experience that, can imagine what the people that do experience success have to. Like that, like I was watching an interview with Kurt Cobain the other day. Forgot who was interviewing him. Actually, I don't know who it was, but but what you're saying is that you interviewed some other rock stars, and they were like kind of what was the word she used now? I forget what that word was. Nutty, I think is the word she used. The person was nutty. And she asked Kurt Cobain, "Are you a nutty?" And he said, "Well, I think what his response was that he can understand how it gets that way. It can get that way, but that he never really bought into having a personality, that matched kind of what the fans were formulating." I don't know how he said it, but that's what I got from it. Uh, it was easy to like him, and and like his talking frankly about his demons, his battles, the things that have been difficult to deal with as he became famous. And so anyway, I'm going to go back to the chat room. Craig is saying, "Hi Sawyer." Oh wait, I already read that one. Okay, I'm sorry, I read that already. So there's nothing new in the chat room. It's been 2 hours, and um, oh well, I should say that there's another green comet that I expect might be composed of two or more objects, as so many other comets seem to display, seem to evidence. Um, Let me go back over to this one or this one. I might as well just post my books, my book information on the screen for a second. And this one, which I don't know if everybody that's watching at this point has seen all these. I know there's some repeats with my other screen, but there's some new ones too. These are all either solar events or comets that look like one comet that look like two now, split apart, like these two on the far left uh, center, or these two pictures of the Pan-STARRS comet from the Earth that shows a little dot running in the front of it. It shows a little airplane going through the back of the tail. And Pluto up here in the center top with its four little rectangular doors or openings or exhaust. I don't know what they are, but nobody's. I haven't seen NASA put a focus on them and talk about them, but maybe they are. If I went back to that Pluto site, They talked about the big C that's there, which I related to. I wonder if you even got the screen. Oh yeah, you did. All right, cool. That square object was like right above the sun. You can see the picture in the middle center. Dead center is that object that's the square with a little tail on it, and that's the sun beneath it there. And to the right, to the left of that center is the big square bright object. That's that object blown up. And the individual, Scott Waring, actually prepared this, and he did put some kind of a filter on that tail part. A shadow, I think he put on it, he said. So it doesn't look exactly like that. I wish he wouldn't have done that, but I should go back to his site. I think he's got the original there. I mean, I don't mind them, doing stuff to it. It kind of does help, give a shape sometimes and stand it out better maybe. But overall, I'd like to leave them as close to what they originally look like as better as we can. And then the top, very top, is that little object over the sun, the same object, but further away. You can barely see the dot above the sun. And then to the right of that sun, or to the left of Pluto, is the object, the Hale-Bopp comet, in the middle, and then that's the alleged companion object to its right, and then three of the smaller objects that are close behind it, and then the stars that are far away from it. And that's why they look dimmer and also more oblong in their shape, further they get away. And that's why you can tell that the companion object is closer to the same shape as the Hale-Bopp comet, but not as bright and not having a tail. But it actually does have a black tail associated with it, which is very interesting. It's the way Tiendo taught that the scarab beetle, they were like the scarab beetle. So they made like a little beetle in the sky by that picture. And that was taken by a Japanese observatory. So I think it might not have been doctored at all, like the one from the Hawaii Observatory, I believe was. And yeah, they said in like 1977 that they were, when we were following them around between like Wyoming and Texas during the seasonal changes that we had and where we lived, and we got down to San Antonio and they had a little meeting and they said they were like the scarab beetle with the young trailing behind, and how I related that to Revelation chapter 12, where it talks about how the woman went into the wilderness, and just doesn't say that the woman with the son and the students go into the wilderness, but it's more of the depiction of the woman T being the mother of scarab beetle, and so that they were all, what Tiendo said is that all of their young were trailing, attached to them, trailing through the territory in their cars. It's like another depiction of that. So So I didn't talk about, I might as well talk about the rest of these pictures. The Ceres lights are the bottom to the right of the Pan-STARRS comet that has that red and black and green and yellow, the way they put the color filters on it to distinguish the different types of denseness of, I guess, those, that tail. So these Ceres lights are, there's a big story to all this and the way these came about, but there's the comparison of Las Vegas from space and Ceres from a different location in space. I don't remember exactly how far away this Las Vegas picture was taken of space. It's not that far, I don't think. But the Ceres is, I think, taken quite a ways away, like maybe 1,200 miles or something like that. So that's pretty much, the comet that's beneath the sun on the far left of the screen, in the middle. It's got two lights and it kind of looks like a purpley exchange of energy between these two lights, like two eyes. And that's Comet Honda, which came to perihelion. I'm not sure exactly when the perihelion was, but this photograph, I think, was from December or January of 2017. So it would have been December of 2016 or January of 2017. And how it looks like two objects when it was expanded. Or it was depixelated. Maybe they depixelated it too. Because the NASA people are pixelating things. We know that. Well, I mean, I don't doubt it. And I saw an example of how it was used, and then there was a whistleblower that said that he was part of that department for a while. But they did it in order to see things better that were there, so they would get rid of backgrounds and things like that. But I don't doubt that they also would have done it to not see things if there was something that there was gonna be too challenging for them to put before the general public. You know what? I think I've come to the end of my rope after 2.25 hours, and I do need to get a little bit more sleep. And so I've felt good talking about the next level again after I took that break. And I'll just wait one more look at the chat room. And if there's nothing in there, I'm going to bid you all good night.